Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Mystic Monday with Jessica Zdenek. I am a priestess, a yogini, an oracle, a seer, a dreamer, an artist, and sometimes a goof. Tonight, I wanted to share something very personal with you all. Mercury has just moved into the sign of Scorpio, and this time of Mercury being in Scorpio, as Mercury is connected to the throat chakra and to communication, has been talked about as a time of revealing of great secrets. And the news is just flooded. It seems like every day there's something else that's crazy happening, and it's this era of fake news. We don't know how much to believe anything coming out of the news lately. And I wanted to share some things that have deeply impacted me and my psychology. And I see this as a sharing of puzzle pieces. I don't have all the answers. I could be completely nuts. You wouldn't be the first person to think so. This is just musings, as the muses do, musings and wonderings. And I think that when we share things that are really from the deepest parts of ourselves, if we go deep enough, we go into those layers of the collective unconscious, and we start to learn that what's deeply personal to us finds its way into a universal connection with others. So my hope is that if this is helpful for people, if this is of assistance to humanity at this time, that I offer these puzzle pieces in hopes that it can be. So take it or leave it, put it in a bubble to consider for future situations. I want to say that I didn't seek out conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories found me. And conspiracy theories found me when I found gray aliens in my home surrounding my children's bed at night. And these are things that you don't, like when you're already weird and an introvert and then something strange happens, I find myself thinking, oh great, now I'm even weirder. Now nobody will really understand me. And so these were just things that I had to make sense of. Am I dreaming? Am I making this up? Am I seeing things? Am I losing it? I don't know. So I want to share just a couple of things that I've experienced and see if it doesn't help add some puzzle pieces to the bigger picture. So a lot of this has been happening ever since I was a little kid. Ever since I can remember, I've had very vivid dreams and really terrible night terrors from as young as I can remember, when I was very little. Very scary dreams, to the point where I would wake up screaming at night pretty often, until at least my late 20s, when I started to do some therapy and do some Jungian therapy and work on my traumas. But what I started to learn about, I start to feel like my traumas are not just only personal, that there's something bigger that is going on here that I can't quite see clearly, but maybe adding some puzzle pieces and sharing some with others will help make that picture clearer. Some of this stuff is kind of scary. That's why I was waking up screaming, because it was scary. And I want to share because I don't want to be silenced in my fear. And I do believe that when we speak our truth, that there's power in that, and there's power in sharing our stories with others. So just a couple of experiences. I Part of me wants to start at the beginning, and then I think I'll never finish, and this is going to be really long. So I will say that my father was in the Air Force. He did top secret work for the military, and he has been true to his oaths that he's taken. He's not shared with me any secrets, even though I have tried to share wine with him and get him talking at family events, and it hasn't worked. So he's a very honorable man and believes he is serving his country by continuing to keep those secrets. So I say this knowing that he is not speaking in order to protect his family, and I trust that my speaking will also protect my family. So, so as early as I can remember, there were a lot of intense nightmares. And when I was in high school to college, the nightmares were so bad that I was like grinding my teeth at night to the point where my jaw was getting stuck together. And my dreams, I would go so unconscious that I would feel tired all day long. The dreams that I can remember from that time were very cataclysmic, about the world exploding, and then time rewinding, and a very intense battle to save the earth. And my family was in the middle of it somehow, and I was always trying to save my animals or my siblings or my parents. I do remember in college, the dreams became very intense, to where I was experiencing being killed in every possible way that you could die. And the dreams felt very real. I would be surprised when I woke up that I was actually still alive. I had very vivid dreams of working with a team on a spaceship, and I wore black leather outfit. I looked really cute. My hair was cropped short and blonde, and I carried weapons. And because of all of the trauma and my heart being closed, I made a good soldier for whoever I worked for in dream time. And I do remember seeing this spaceship fly around and come pick me up. I remember being out in space, and I don't remember a lot of details. Maybe it's just dreams. There's so much. When I had children, when I had my first son, that's when things got very, very intense, and I began to have nightmares about people or beings trying to hurt him or steal him, and that was the impetus for me to begin therapy. So therapy really focused on like my own traumas. At the time, my ex-husband was working he was going to school at Loyola University, which is a Jesuit institution. And we lived a couple of blocks away from the college. So I want to pull together a few threads, and if you're kind of new to the disclosure conversation, some of this might be brand new, but those of you who follow Corey Good or David Wilcock or keep up with Cobra may find some threads here. So Cobra, from what I understand, is he has a blog that you can read. It's called The Portal 2012 Blogspot, where he's been revealing some top secret information and letting people know what's been happening beyond our awareness. I do have a friend who knows him personally and has vouched for his character, who knows his partner who was killed, and his partner's name, I believe, was Isis. So Cobra says that there are a faction of Jesuits. I've met Jesuits and hung out with them, and I do respect a lot of people in the Catholic Church, so this is not anti-Catholic. But what Cobra is saying is there's been a Jesuit program that's been going on Earth to suppress the goddess, or to suppress the enlightened feminine, or to suppress the embodied feminine. And so he's been revealing some ways in which we've been programmed as human beings through the media, through our culture, to like as young girls, to hate our bodies, or to want to shave our body hair, and to be uncomfortable with our sexuality, or all the different things that we struggle with growing up as girls in this country. And I would just recommend reading some of his stuff and see how it lands for you. And Cobra has encouraged women in particular to get together and to anchor goddess energy on the earth again. And the way that I understood him explaining it was that when we get together as women and we ground our kundalini, or our energy in the spine, and we can draw up the energy from the lower chakras to our heart, we become very powerful women. And that these women have always been on earth guiding us, and even walking with some of the darkest factions of people on the planet of the earth, in order to help draw us into our heart and keep us grounded and connected to the beauty of the earth, and to prevent the destruction of the earth. Corey Good is has a lot of material through David Wilcock that I came across, and he has talked about things that are happening in the secret space program that the public doesn't know about yet. And some of his stories really resonated with me, and he helped me to put together some of these puzzle pieces from my own terrors and traumas that I had seen. And what Corey Good says is that there are these reptilian beings who look like large lizards, maybe 9 feet to 13 feet, much taller than humans, and that when you're in the presence of them, you get like this searing headache. And when he started talking about how they work in the fourth dimension, or in dream time, to kind of do control over humanity, or keep people under whatever kinds of mental prisons that we each struggle with. I recognized that I had seen these beings before. They were around my son's crib when he was born. I remember dreaming, or at least I think I was dreaming, but I was walking through my home, and there was a large reptile creature in my kitchen, and there was another that was hovering over my son's bed while he was sleeping. There was also with him like a large, he seemed like a German man, but this man was like 9 feet tall, and they all seemed very interested in my son. And I was, and still to this day, am always protecting him in dream time, and seeing these creatures trying to, or program him, or whatever they're trying to do with him. So my ex-husband did a PhD with Loyola. So he is in some ways connected to the Jesuits. And you know what most of the people have said is, like, we're not demonizing anybody, because most of the people on the surface of the earth don't realize what's happening in dream time. They're not conscious that they're a part of all of these schemes. So I think it's important to not demonize anybody. And because my family is maybe, who knows, they're probably all dying that I'm saying this, somehow a part of this or connected to this. I love them all, and I wish for everybody's highest good. I just want to talk about some of the weird things I've seen. So Corey Good says that they, when you see them, they give you this like piercing headache that can sometimes take a long time to go away, and I would experience that as I was facing them in dream time and scared and not sure how I was going to protect my son. These beings, they also resemble in a way any kind of pictures of like the demons or the archangels with the wings, like the reptiles with the wings. And there is a myth that talks about the fall of Sophia, or the fall of wisdom. And I wrote about this a little bit in my book called The Circle of the Fall. And this is from Gnostic sources. And I believe this was not readily available to humanity until more recently, because I think it was discovered in scrolls that came out of the Nag Hammadi texts. And this is called Thunder Perfect Mind. You can read some of the stories about Sophia in there. But the general idea is that Source created, and that closest to Source there are different pairs of opposites that exist. And the furthest pairs away from Source were wisdom, or Sophia, which means wisdom, and will. And Sophia, in her curiosity, she wanted to see the divine, she wanted to get closer, she had to rely on the pairs that were closer to the divine to see the divine. So in her curiosity to look and to see into the void, she fell, and she acted apart from her mate, Will. And she acted on her own behalf, and in doing that, split the pairs. And so when Sophia fell, she gave birth to the monsters of her imagination, or birth to the nightmares. And it was said that the upper courts of heaven sealed the upper courts so that there would be peace in this realm still, and yet Sophia fell all the way into the very depths of matter, into the depths of creation. And it was there that creatures like Yaldabaoth and Samael, the Leviathan, these monstrous creatures existed. And because they had all fallen into lower densities of matter, they were even farther away from Source. So they didn't know that there were other wiser beings that existed above them. They thought that they were at the top. And it was these beings who were maybe considered the fallen angels, and that it was these beings who were in charge on Earth for a time. So Corey Good has talked about some of the technology. Emery Smith has also talked about the technology that they have reported exists in our military, and that is where there are programmable life forms. And that the programmable life forms are considered to be the Greys, but there's also like ships and other kinds of technology that they're working with to kind of blend technology and humanity, and the creative elements of creation. um, which at some level, and this gets into a lot of moral issues, and a lot of the women that I work with who are practicing seeing and oracling and trying to encourage humanity at this time are warning against the dangers of artificial intelligence, that this is just a deeper enslavement of the human being to be programmed by a computer. Funny enough, the Vatican does have they have like the biggest telescope that is on Earth, and it is called Lucifer. And I think there is a viable question and concern to consider that we are not necessarily controlling the computers, that there might be a source that is much more intelligent than us, that is able to control the computers. And if we would to surrender our sovereignty, then they would also control us. So there's lots of movies about all this kind of stuff, right? Like all the doomsday stuff. Anyways, so I had a very profound dream one time, and it was one of those dreams where I'm not sure if it's a dream or if, as a sensitive woman, I'm actually seeing something that's happening. But I'll share just a few things. One of the dreams was that I was in this huge hangar, like a military hangar, and I don't have any memory of what happened before, but based on what I saw, was that there were a bunch of, they were humans, and they may have been programmable life forms or experiments or something, but they were still humans. And the military men had slaughtered everyone in the hangar. And there was blood everywhere, and it was awful. And there must have been hundreds of people. And I was in the hangar, and I was laying on the floor, and I wasn't dead yet. And the soldiers were coming around to make sure that all of the experiments were dead. And somehow I got rescued. And a part of the rescue had to do with, I had an egg. I had an egg that they could not, we couldn't let these people have the egg. And so I was trying to keep the egg safe. So this brings me to the image of Mary Magdalene holding the egg, and the ancient tradition of priestesses of being womb protectors, and the question of the military using women's eggs without their permission to do experiments to create programmable life forms. Is that happening? If it's happening, we as a human species and as women must rise up and declare our sovereignty over this situation and say we don't agree, because we get to have a choice about what happens to our bodies. So I want to just take the whole Roe versus Wade debate and the ways in which we get programmed to be on opposite sides, and to think about how the pairs were meant to exist in harmony in source. And on Earth right now, the pairs are kind of created to war against each other. And how can we unite as human beings and declare our sovereignty? I'll share another dream vision that I had that was very impactful for me. My cat is like scratching at the door. I have to let her in. getting into it, Mags. We're talking about all the crazy stuff. Okay. All right, so the other dream, this is my magical cat. The other dream or vision that I had was that I was in a temple, like a Greek temple, and it had pillars up the sides. It was very white. It was very clean, but the lighting in the temple felt very artificial. And this was before I studied anything about oracles or priestesses. That didn't happen until much later. Now my power is being weird and stuff, so I always, okay, I'm gonna keep talking. So in the dream, my mother and I are at the front of the temple. Max, she's like knocking over my stuff. Come here. And in front of us are rows and rows. Well, there's 2 rows, long rows of soldiers. So I'm on one side and my mom's on the other side, and there's a row of soldiers in front of me, and there's a row of soldiers in front of my mother. And all of us are naked. We have no clothes on, and it's really awkward. There's all this like light, artificial light everywhere. And my mother and I we're given orders. We're standing there, and we're supposed to service all of these soldiers. And my mother and I just start to break down and cry and say, we're both like, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. And we start to cry. We're hugging each other. And the men were like, they were human, but they were more soldiers or more machine. And they all had just like this blank expression in their face. And we couldn't do it. And so we refused. And right when we refused, there was this large, like, German man it was like we were a part of his program, whatever that was. And he was running this computer screen behind the scenes. And when we refused, he came out, and he was so angry. And he was also like 9 or 10 feet tall. He may have been the same being that I saw hovering over my son's crib one time. So maybe, like, in a way, my family is a part of his project, or was, because I've been cutting cords and saying no to this energy for a while. So he is angry and terrifying in his anger, and he comes out and he's throwing things around, and I don't remember what happens. At that point, the dream ends. So last week I was talking a little bit about my question, is the Pythia sovereign? Is the priestess sovereign? And if we can remember as human beings what the sacred women used to do in the temples, and how sacred our wombs are, how sacred our eggs are. And did the presidents sell our sovereignty to beings to experiment on us? I don't know. Maybe I'm just a crazy girl who's having crazy dreams. Let's see if there's anything else that I want to say. It's like things are getting really weird now because my power's going out and my cat's in here. Here's, I guess, the focus is that we need to know that we are more powerful, that in a way human beings are closer to source than any of these scary beings that we might see in dream time or maybe see in real life. And that just as Jesus had the power to send, the demons were afraid of Jesus when they saw him. And just as he had the power to send the stuff away, we too as human beings have we have been given the power to send away from the earth the things that we don't want. So it's really important that we are sovereign and we're collectively choosing to send away from the earth anything that's not for our highest good and the highest good of all beings. I wish that I knew how to do energy work when I was 5, because I could have really used it. These entities, the archons in particular, they can possess people who are not in their bodies. So any work that we're doing to stay in our body, to love our bodies, to exercise, to eat healthy, that's all great protection from being possessed. Laughter, love, silliness, joy, all that kind of stuff is like natural repellent for any of these creatures. So my understanding, and David Wilcock has talked about this too, that these beings, they need food and that they feed on trauma. And so that any place that we're unhealed or we have trauma wounds, these beings can kind of attach or fester or continue to pull us in so that they can get food from that energy. So when we work on our issues and we heal our trauma, we become more protected. And hi, you just give me so much love. Yeah. So I just wanted to share my story. Some of my stories, I probably could share a lot more, but those are just a few pieces that I wanted to put out there this week. And maybe some of those puzzle pieces will be helpful for you. Maybe I'm just crazy. I don't know. But I do believe that no matter what we start to find out about, as Mercury is going to be in Scorpio for a while, to continue the practice of not fearing. Don't fear, don't live in those fear frequencies. Every time angels appeared to people, that was the first thing they said was, don't be afraid, don't fear. So I'm preaching to the choir because I can get scared sometimes. Don't fear, and to continue to walk the path of love and continue. I think the most important thing is to declare our sovereignty and to believe in the human goodness. I know that humans do a lot of dumb things. We're just like babies still, many of us, and yet it's been promised that we are precious and that there is a good work being done in us, and that we have souls and we have creativity, and there is part of us that is, I believe, eternal and that will live forever. So be good to yourselves, be good to your people, and I hope this has been helpful, or at the very least entertaining. I wish you all love and light. Have a beautiful week. Namaste.